Hello, everyone, and welcome to another little tech breakdown here. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the Sennheiser G3 wireless lavalier system. In this video, we're going to go through the setting it up and getting the frequencies going, and then in a separate video, we're going to take a look at setting the levels. Let's take a look here. So we have our wireless set of transmitter and receiver here. This is the Generation 3, the G3s. There is a Generation 2 out there, and the newest one is the Generation 4. So the setup might be a little bit different depending on which one you're using, but for the most part, it's going to be fairly similar for all of these. And you'll know just by on the bottom here, it says either G3 or G2. Also says on the back here, Generation G3 or G2. So the first thing you have to do is identify your matched pair. So we have a transmitter here, and then we have a receiver right here. So they look almost identical. There's very little difference between them. The biggest difference you're going to notice is on top there's a mute switch on one, and the other one does not have the mute switch. So the mute switch is the transmitter. That's the one that goes to the actor. You're going to put that on the person speaking, and then the receiver is the portion that will get plugged into your recording device, be it your camera or your recorder or whatever it is you're going to record that audio to. So there are wires involved. The term wireless, does kind of confuse people. The little microphone is going to be on a wire, and there is going to be another wire here to actually plug the receiver into the recording device. So there are wires involved, but the wirelessness happens between the transmitter and the receiver. So once we figure out which is the transmitter and which is the receiver, we also need to make sure that we have a matched pair of frequencies. So if you turn these over to the back, you should see little frequency ranges on them. The pair that I have is a range G. G is in golf. You'll see that on the back here, it's specifying that range G is from 566 megahertz to 608 megahertz. Each letter corresponds to a different range of frequencies. So just make sure that if you have multiple sets here, that you're matching the pair. So a transmitter that is a frequency range G needs to talk to a receiver that is frequency range G. The other frequency ranges available are going to be like A and B, and there's a newer frequency range they're calling AA. Because of a lot of changes in the FCC recently, they're having to put out new frequencies and new specific ranges that these are going to be in. So the A, B, G might be gone by the time you see this video, but there will be some sort of frequency letter denoting the range that it matches to. So again, just make sure you have a matched pair. We have a transmitter and a receiver, both operating in the same frequency range, either A, B, G, or AA, whatever you're working with. So once we have our matched pair here, we can go ahead and turn them on. So first thing you're going to want to do is only turn on the receiver. We're going to start our programming and finding of channels with our receiver here. So if you noticed, I put in two AA batteries. These are rechargeable batteries. And if you noticed, I put them in the same direction. So unlike most batteries, these batteries actually go in parallel rather than in series. So they're both going to go the same direction, negative on this side, positive on this side. Don't flip one because then you won't actually be able to turn it on. But most of the time they'll power right up when you do put the batteries in. If you put the batteries in and it doesn't automatically turn on, all you have to do is hold down that little power button there. You hold that down for a few seconds and it'll turn on. You hold it down for a few more seconds and it turns off. So if you notice here with the backlight on, you can see that the mute is on. That basically means that it's not getting a signal right now. So either the mute switch is off on the other one, or the transmitter just literally isn't turned on, which is the case right now. So we'll take a look through some of the menu options here. And first off, just notice that there are only 4 buttons on this device. We have the on-off button, we have the set, we have the arrow up and the arrow down. So that's pretty much how we're going to navigate through all of the menu options here. So I'm going to hit that set button once, and we're going to start taking a look through some of these menu options. First one I'm going to start with is, let's go to Easy Setup. And if I hit set, that will select Easy Setup. And if you go into Current List, it'll bring up the last thing that you scanned. But we're actually going to go down here to Scan New List. So if you go to Scan New List and you hit the Set button, what it's actually doing now is it's literally going through all of the frequencies that are on this frequency range. You can see it's going from 566 all the way up to 608, and it's checking each individual frequency in between, well, specific frequencies that it denotes or it's been programmed to. It doesn't check literally every single frequency because that would be infinite, but it does check a large number of frequencies within this range, and it's going to come back and try and let me know which would be the most likely good frequencies. So the thing to understand here is, even though it's scanning frequencies, it's only checking each frequency for a fraction of a second, a millisecond, a nanosecond, something like that. So it doesn't necessarily know that the frequency is clean completely. It just knows that when it listened for that millisecond or nanosecond or whatever, that there was nothing happening at that exact moment. So it's going to come back, and right now it says bank 3 free 3. So what that means is that in bank 3 there are 3 free channels that it's found. So that's really not a lot, but I'm in LA. I'm right next to the airport. So there's a lot of frequencies that are not going to be available to me here. So this is pretty normal for my scanning. If you're scanning out in the middle of nowhere, you're, in the plains of Montana, you're probably going to find tons of frequencies that are available. So it literally just depends on where you are, how crowded the frequencies are in your area. There's a lot of different factors that interrupt the radio frequencies. So, everything from internet to electricity to the position of the sun in the sky. So we need to try and do our best to manage these frequencies. Understand that this is going to be a continual process. Things are going to change throughout the day. Frequencies are going to go away or be more available or get crowded. So we do have to always be listening and always be ready to change these frequencies when we do start hearing that static or noise or issues there. So when I looked here, it stopped on bank 3 and it has 3 free. Now, you have to understand that when it scans, it's scanning from, or it's basically dividing all of those that entire frequency range into 20 banks, and then there's 12 channels in each one of those banks. So it's basically just trying to break it down to make it a little bit easier to understand, because literally you can break down frequencies as much as you want, and you could have infinite numbers of frequencies in between whatever range. So it tries to break it down into 20 banks and 12 channels in each of those banks that are considered, fairly optimal frequencies, and they're actually made to work together if you stay within a bank, but that's a little beyond this. So what we're looking at here is if it's on bank 3, if it stops the scan on bank 3, that means that that's the bank with the most number of free channels, which again, 3 out of 12, not exactly great, but since I'm right next to the airport in LA, I can't really expect to get much better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit set to go into that bank, and now it's showing me bank 3 channel 2, and I'm going to scroll up and see what other channels are free. So there's only 3 channels that are free. So it's showing me bank 3 channel 2, bank 3 channel 5, and bank 3 channel 8. So I can choose any one of those 3. Now, if you're going to be using a lot of these, if you're using, 4 or 5 radios out there, it's a good idea to keep them on the same bank in different channels. If you put all the microphones on the same bank and channel, they're going to interfere with each other, and you're going to hear every microphone on every receiver, and it's not going to be a good deal. But the way that the frequencies are arranged on these machines, if you do have multiple, the frequencies within one bank are supposed to work better together. So if you do have 2 or 3 of these all on the same range, the same frequency range, if they're all frequency range G, I would probably choose these 3 free channels. So I'd put one of these on bank 3 channel 2, I'd put one of them on bank 3 channel 5, and I'd put one of them on bank 3 channel 8. Beyond that, it's really just up to you to listen and make sure that these are clean channels. If that doesn't work out for you, again, that's just your first line of defense. If that doesn't work out, you're going to move on and just try some of the other banks and channels. Literally, this becomes a guess and check system at this time. You have to just plug everything in, put your headphones on, listen, and listen with a little bit of distance. You want to move these kind of far apart, or at least, the distance that your actor is going to be at, so that you can make sure that that frequency actually holds up at that distance. Because when your transmitter is right next to your receiver, the frequency's, not going to have a very hard time getting there. But the more distance there is, the harder it is for that frequency to make it through. So we've done our searching on our receiver here, and we found bank 3, and we're going to go with bank 3 channel 2. So I'm just going to hit the set button. Make sure it says stored. It has to say stored there, or that frequency isn't actually programmed into the machine. So once that is stored in there, we can go ahead and hit the on-off button to go back out to the main screen. And now I can go ahead and turn on my receiver. So I'm going to put my transmitter. I'm going to put my receiver to the side here. And now I'm going to go ahead and turn on the transmitter. When you're scanning frequencies, you want to make sure that your transmitters are off. It's not a big deal if you only have one set, but if you have multiple microphones that are on wireless systems and all of your transmitters are on, when you scan frequencies, it's going to tell you that those are bad channels, that those are channels that are being used. So make sure that your transmitters are off to make sure that you have as many free open channels as possible. So I got the batteries into the transmitter here, and we can go ahead and power that up and make sure that it gets onto the same bank and channel. So first I'm going to show you the long way, and then I'll show you the quicker way. Both ways work. You do just want to double check either way. So on the receiver here, so remember on the receiver, which is in my hand now, on the receiver, we programmed it to bank 3 channel 2. So now I'm going to pick up the transmitter here. Again, the transmitter has the mute switch. So I'm going to program this one to bank 3 channel 2 as well. So all I have to do is hit the set button, and then I'm going to scroll on down until I get to, just past it, frequency preset there. I'm going to hit enter on the set on the frequency preset, and then it's going to take me into that same menu you saw before. So we're going to scroll down on the bank, and we're going to change that bank to bank 3. And then we're going to hit set, and now we're going to scroll down on channel to get to channel 2. So we're on bank 3 channel 2 here. Always a good idea just to double check, and you can see on your receiver here, if you go up and down, it'll change from showing you the bank and channel to the actual frequency that you're receiving on. So bank 3 channel 2 happens to be 979.300 megahertz. So we can go over here. We have bank 3 channel 2, and on our transmitter, we're going to make that bank 3 channel 2, and you can see at the bottom here, it's also corresponding with the actual frequency, 579.300. So I'll hit set on that and make sure it says stored again. Once that happens, you should see this green light up. The RF, the radio frequency, is making a connection, and the receiver is receiving something. Now, again, just because it's receiving something doesn't mean it's good. You have to listen, you have to double check, but you do know you have, made that next step. So you have made a connection there. Now we can also double check that. We can hit the on off button to go to the main screen, and we can go to this screen here, and we can see that there is a strong connection. This bar here where it says RF, it's showing the basically the connection strength. There's another meter next to it and a meter over here on the transmitter that's going to show us our level. Again, we'll cover changing the level in another video. Now I'm just going to show you quickly the shortcut for getting that frequency matched from your receiver into your transmitter. What you're going to do is on your receiver here, you're going to hit the set button. You're going to scroll on down to where it says sync. So I hit the sync, and you'll see this little symbol and arrow come up. And what I want to do is there's a little RF transmitter and receiver built into these transmitters and receivers. I'm sorry, not RF, but IR, infrared. Just like the remote control on your television, there's a little signal that gets sent out from the receiver, and it can be sent to the transmitter to tell it what frequency to go to. So with that little sync lit up there, what I want to do is match. Oh, I waited too long and the sync didn't actually go through. But once I do press that set button again, you'll see the sync come up. And then I want to make sure that I match this little square to this little square from the transmitter to the receiver. And hopefully if you match those up right, you should see that little check symbol come up on the receiver and everything should be good. You should have that green light come on again, and you can always double check to make sure that they're on bank 3 channel 2, and this one is 579-300, 579-300. So we know we're on the same frequency now. So everything should be good there. That is the biggest, most important step. You want to make sure that you change those frequencies again when you, anytime that you go to a new location, anytime you start hearing some interference, you'd never want to trust frequencies just basically by turning these on. You want to scan for new frequencies in every new location. So it's very important. Every time you change sets, you really want to scan again. And that could be from shooting in this room to shooting in the other room. You know, you go into the bedroom, it's a new set. Believe it or not, being closer or further from internet routers, or closer to the cell phone tower that's down the street, or closer to the electrical lines that are outside, all of that can interfere with your radio frequencies. So you want to make sure that you're scanning those frequencies and finding the cleanest, newest frequencies in every single location. Beyond that, we'll take a look through just some of the other menu options that you might want to take a look at here. So I have the receiver in my hand right now. So I'm going to hit the set button here, and we're going to take a look through some of these options. So I'm in the advanced right now. In the advanced, you can tune in any one specific frequency that you wanted to. So rather than going by the bank and channel, if you knew a frequency that you needed to match to, or sometimes if you're on a studio lot, they assign you a frequency and you have to use that. So rather than trying to figure out what bank and channel that is, you can just program that frequency directly into your transmitters and your receivers. If we go down here, we also have your software version, basically. No big deal. Reset is going to change everything back to default settings. LCD contrast is just, how much contrast is in this screen here. If I turn that down, the screen becomes a little harder to see. If I turn that up, the screen becomes a little easier to see. I'll hit the set button there, make sure it says stored. We can go down to pilot tone. Pilot tone is something you do want to know about. Pilot tone is basically it's a inaudible audio signal that gets sent from the transmitter to the receiver, indicating that the transmitter is actually on. So basically what the pilot tone does is that if for some reason you break contact, the transmitter is no longer able to talk to the receiver, the battery runs out, there's a bunch of interference, gets too far away, something like that. If the pilot tone is on, it's going to go to silence. If the pilot tone is not on and that frequency gets disrupted, it's going to go to static, and it's going to try and listen to whatever is out there available, and you'll just hear, the static of the universe. So you do need to make sure that you understand that pilot tone exists, because the pilot tone needs to be either turned on or turned off on both of these devices, the transmitter and the receiver. And the way to tell that is if I click out here, if I hit the on-off button and go to the main screen, you'll see down here on the receiver, there's a little P that's in that box that's telling me that the pilot tone is on. I pretty much always leave the pilot tone on. It's very rare that I would, need that extra distance and be willing to sacrifice staticky sound for that. So if the sound's going to get staticky, I'd want it to cut out anyways. So I leave that pilot tone on. But notice that that little P in that box is there. And then if I take a look on the transmitter, we have a little P as well. If I go in and turn off that pilot tone, let's go to inactive, hit stored, you'll notice that the little P goes away. So right now, these two, even though they are on the same bank and channel, they will not talk to each other because one has pilot tone on and one has pilot tone off. So that is another thing that you just have to be aware of. If you're connecting these and you got the same frequency and everything should be good, double check that you don't have that pilot tone on one and not on the other. It has to match. You have to have pilot tone on both of them. So again, go into that advanced, hit set again, hit set on pilot tone, and just change that from active to inactive, or inactive to active, whichever. That's pretty much it for advanced. Let's take a look at AutoLock. AutoLock basically just after you set it means that the buttons won't do anything. That's if you have to hand it off to someone and you're not sure if they know what they're doing, or if you have to give things to actors, you can turn the locks on and make sure that they don't actually accidentally change any settings on you. For the most part, I just leave that off, though, especially if you're in a professional environment with actual actors and you're seeing everything that's happening, you shouldn't have to worry about that. The AF out, that we're going to get into when we talk about setting our levels. The AF out is basically just how loud the sound comes out of the receiver here into your recording device. I usually set that at -6. Depends on the recording device you're using, how much gain it has, how good the preamps are on that. It's always balancing the loudness of one device versus the amplification of another device. Which device is better for which? It really depends on what the rest of your signal chain is. But for the way I usually run this, -6 seems to be a good AF out for me. So if we go down again, name, you can actually name these devices, change what they're called. It's tedious and kind of annoying. If you really want to look special, or if you have, a lot of these and you want to name them by actor, or if you're doing a play and you have 20 channels to manage, you might want to name each one of them so you know who's connected to what. I prefer just to put little stickers on them too, and, little blue. That way I know, because I'm only running, 2 to 5 lavs at a time. But, again, if you're running 20 lavs, it might be better to name them so you know who has which lav. Let's see here, factory preset. Frequency preset. We talked about that already. That would just be to manually change that preset, or manually change that bank and channel. And then easy setup. We did talk about easy setup a little bit, but I'm just going to go through the other portions. So easy setup was what I told you to go to scan new list. That's how we find our frequencies. If you've already scanned a list and the frequency that you're listening to is getting scratchy, or you're just hearing interference, you can go to current list. And current list is going to bring up, again, the list you scanned the most recently. And you can go through those banks and channels and see which frequencies are available, how many banks and what channels. So like I said, again, since I'm right next to the airport here, I'm not going to have a whole lot of free channels. So I can go through these one by one. Again, that bank 3 with 3 free channels, that was going to be the best I'm going to do. Again, depending on where you are, you might have more free channels available. So that's the receiver. Some other things that we can go through, on the transmitter here, there's just a couple other options we do want to take a look at here. So for the transmitter, if I hit the set button, the sensitivity where it comes up first, that's how we set the loudness. I'm going to go through that in a separate video, the level of the transmitter and the receiver here. But we can go on down. We can go into advanced here, and advanced is, again, just a tuning. So if you have an assigned frequency that you need to go to, we can tune that in, software revision or reset, or your LCD contrast, and again, pilot tone. So pretty much the same advanced settings as you had on the receiver, with a couple of extras. So we have our cable emulation. This is, if you're trying to use this in conjunction with musical equipment, so if you're trying to use these transmitters and receivers to plug into guitars and things like that, you can actually emulate the tones that are generated by different types of cables. That's not necessarily something I play with at all. I'm not a musician. I'm mainly on-set sound, so I don't really get into that at all. Mute mode, this is where you can change what the mute switch does. So you can either disable the mute switch, switch, or you can have it disabled by, or I'm sorry, not the mute switch, but the automatic muting inside of this machine. I usually just leave it at disabled. That way you don't have to worry about it muting itself accidentally. Or there's nothing worse than getting into a scene and they say action and you realize that the actor's mic is muted. So I try not to turn any of the auto mute settings on, just because it ends up being annoying when you're in the middle of, chaos on set. Let's see here. Mute mode. Yep, that's everything there. So we'll exit out of there. Go next, AutoLock. So AutoLock is going to, again, be, if I turn that on, active, basically it's going to lock all of the lock the levels and everything. So the actors can't adjust on you. RF mute off. Nope, there we go. And AutoLock, again, we can name it. So again, if you're doing matched pairs and you need to manage a bunch of them, we can have our names match. And then we're back to frequency preset and sensitivity. So once you have your frequencies matched and set up, then we can go ahead and plug in our cable. So on your receiver here, we have a cable that looks something like this. It looks like a little headphone jack on one end and a little XLR cable on the other end. All you have to do is screw in that headphone jack side, or plug in that headphone jack side, and then make sure you screw it on down. So we're going to screw that down to make sure it's secure. And then this end can go right into your recording device. And again, we'll talk about setting the levels, but basically once it's plugged into your recorder, you're going to set that level just like you would any other microphone. So you're going to set the level on the transmitter, then on the receiver, and then on your recording device. But again, we'll go over that in another movie or another video here. And then on your transmitter here, that is where your microphone is going to plug into. So we have our little lavalier microphone here. It was nicely organized, but I uncabled it wrong. There we go. So we have our lavalier microphone, and we have the cable end. Looks just the same. It is an 3.5 millimeter with a screw down. So I'm going to go ahead and screw that on down. Try not to I try not to turn the plug as much. This is the end that gets the most abuse, so you want to try to keep that as safe as possible. So I'm going to retie that down and make sure that the cable doesn't get all wound up there. This is nice and secure, and then we can go on and set our levels and mount it onto our actor. So I hope that was helpful, and in the next episode, we'll go ahead and take a look at setting levels. So thanks for joining us.